Look, we have Glenda with us today.
Hi, how are you, Martha?
Hi, fine. It's
It's
so
great to see you.
I know.
Your
All of
family's doing well?
everybody's good.
Oh, good, good. Good to hear.
Yeah.
All set for this?
Yes, ma'am. I just coordinate. Everybody else are the ones who do all the work and have been working all week. So,
You're the,
uh,
you're the pretty one in the group.
hmm. But it is good to see you. We sure do miss seeing everybody in person. That's for
Oh, I
sure.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to see Speaker Psyche the other day for a leaders training, so that was great.
Nice.
Yeah, the background was Hawaii out of his office, so I said, we all want to be in Hawaii right now.
Oh, it would be nice.
Oh, it would be nice.
Mm.
Yeah.
You said Martha was the pretty one. So you're saying the rest of us aren't pretty?
Oh, I didn't know you were on. You're the
People
next
are so
one.
sensitive.
John, you're super pretty in our eyes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's great to see these faces.
I know. And it's Friday.
I know.
And for us East Coasters, man, it's almost happy hour. It's almost time to peel off and relax
Yes.
after a long week.
Are you taking next week off or
I'm not.
Oh.
No. But
still
Yeah.
work to be done?
there's work to be done. Bring it on.
Yes.
Yeah,
You got to keep everybody in line.
that's right. That's right. Angela, do we have most everybody here?
I am going through that now, but I would say go ahead and get started and we'll
Okay.
move.
Well, again, hello everybody and happy Friday. Thanks for an incredibly successful week this week. We're proving that we can do this virtually, even though it may not be our first choice. We've definitely made it a viable option and we're making it work. And that's proven by how we ended the year. So I want to start out by saying on behalf of John and JJ and I, thank you for agreeing to stay on in your places, to continue to give your time and your energy and most definitely your expertise to NCSL and to ongoing staff programming. It means a lot. And I think, you've heard me say that we're doing the 3 C's with careers connected and being creative. And this year I want to add another C for continuity, not COVID, for continuity. So we're going to take everything that we've done in the past year and build on that, finish what we started. We were landing the plane from some of the incentives that came from John and from Chuck Truesdale before him, and we have successfully done quite a bit, and we'll build on those. Recognizing that all of us are a little daunted by some of our chores and how we're going to get through the year. There aren't as many goals this year. Sabrina, there aren't as many goals this year. Is it 7 again?
It was 7 last year. It's 9 this year, but we'll take that as a compliment.
Well, some of them are blended. There you go. We will build on the work that we've done, carry it forward, and take some of your recommendations from last year and kind of move those to the forward. And we'll hear some more about those as you guys give your reports. But I definitely think that we have the brain trust here to move forward and have a really excellent year on behalf of staff. And I'm excited for everything that's about to come. We have some new folks. I said that continuity, but continuity always is accentuated by having some fresh ideas. So I would love to just make some quick introductions. Some names you may know and some may be new to you, but at the end, we'll all welcome our newer folks. John Courtney has accepted returning back to be on the executive committee for the coming year. John Courtney from New Mexico, who had just finished his term in professional staff associations. I'd also like to welcome Natalie Mullis from Colorado. Natalie will also be serving a role on the executive committee and bring her talents and expertise to the group. We haven't had a Colorado person, I don't think, in about a year and a half. So it'd be nice to have that input. We also have Jill Reinmuth from Washington State. Jill went through the senior training recently and has lots of great ideas that she'll be bringing to the table. And we have some new Professional Staff Association folks. Richard Webb, South Carolina. He and JJ are like going to be the South Carolina force here for the Security Professional Association. And we also have Kristen Rottinghouse from Kansas. I think she and Susan are the Kansas contingent now. And finally, Ingrid Hernquist from New Jersey. Ingrid is also serving as an officer this year for the legislative librarians. So if everybody will just wave your hands and say welcome to our newest members and make them feel at home. I know that this is a little difficult to try and network this way, but we'll have some breakout rooms a little bit later, and you guys just jump in. We are such kindred spirits here, and we immediately have common ground in that we love our jobs, we love the legislative institution, and we love how NCSL supports us and works with us to empower staff every day. So, jump in. Your no question is stupid, and your opinions matter. That's why you're here. So I welcome all of you. Let's see, I am going to just keep moving us through here and would love for Tim Story to give us his director's report. I noticed Tim even put a tie on for us. Yeah, so I'm pretty pumped about that. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, the dogs are very confused, I have to tell you. They're like, what's the big occasion? And so it's not a normal day here. It is a beautiful day outside of Denver, Colorado. Thank you, everybody. Friday afternoon, the holiday week before us. I hope everybody's going to get a little bit of a break. I know that is not always the case for people in our professions, but maybe you've set it up in a way that you get a little bit of a break next week. I will just do a few, updates of what's going on at NCSL. We are, I have to say, in pretty good shape despite everything and all things considered. We really miss being out there kind of touching and connecting and being with you folks, and as well as our legislator members. But the shift has been fairly seamless. I think we've done well with it, frankly, compared to maybe some others that I've seen that have made all these virtual meeting shifts and webinar shifts. And so the big thing is, I guess, that our budget is solid. The dues we sent, we invoice. I always like to give LSCC an update of just kind of the overall budget of where NCSL stands, and we invoice dues in around June sometime, June and July, and of course we budgeted assuming that this could be a very difficult year, and given everything, it's not as bad as we thought. In fact, we've been hearing a lot about state budget updates, and from what we can understand, in many states, most states sort of made some fairly, serious estimates, assuming some kind of worst case scenarios. And it's not great. The revenues are not pouring in way above, but they're not as bad as they thought. And that's kind of the case with NCSL. So we're really on track budget-wise, kind of with what we expected, and maybe even a little bit better. Thank you to all of you who help NCSL, particularly on the dues front. I think sometimes, frankly, the legislators and legislative leaders don't appreciate how heavily legislative staff around the country work with NCSL. So to the degree you guys can help them be aware of that, that's always great. So we're doing good on that front. Just a few other things. Really thank you to everybody on here. I think this has been one of the most productive kind of LSCC years in terms of doing some big things that will have lasting impact. And you're gonna talk a lot about these as we come through, sort of the role of LSCC with Basecamp, which was as we've talked about before, was exceeded our expectations, as well as the staff certificate program. Just sort of pull one out of the air. There are many other projects and products that you guys have worked on, and when I stepped back and thought about LSCC and thought about those things, these are sort of long-lasting impact things. So and that, of course, one of the big things, and it's not really an LSCC project, but Mason's Manual, which is a staff project of mostly of the clerks and secretaries. We have the new Mason's Manual out, which is a big deal. It's a 10-year update. For the first time ever, we have an electronic version of that that's searchable and all that. So that's a big event in NCSL's life, is to get Mason's Manual out with, really a ton of help from the Mason's Manual Revision Commission that does this, 10 years of case law and updates. So and there's a lot of interest in it. People are trying to get those books updated and the electronic versions updated. In Washington, we're working pretty, we're starting to really get tuned into the transition to the new administration and deeply involved in terms of tracking like what, if anything's going to happen with stimulus. And the fact is, like everybody else, we kind of don't know. If there is something moving, it's happening well behind the scenes. But mostly in our DC work, it's with making new connections with the transition team for the president-elect. We have a huge new legislator outreach program, so you might hear a little bit about that. Well over 1,000 new legislators across the country. We have, of course, our big election project, and this is the earliest we've ever been able to reach out and connect with those new legislators. We're doing some really, I think, pretty advanced and cool and sophisticated email outreach, but also personal outreach, and also sort of box of goodies and offering training. And speaking of training, we've done over, just since the last meeting of LSCC, we've done 18 training events for legislative staff, and 3 of those were in person. So we're doing some really limited in-person training. And of course, if you're interested in any of that, always encourage you to reach out if there's a way we can complement something you're doing in your state, either for your own staff, your peers, your colleagues, or for the members. We've, I think, really dialed up our capacity and ability to provide excellent customized training and professional development for legislators and staff. So don't ever hesitate to contact Stacy Householder for that. She would be happy to talk to you about it. And that's who gave me that update. Let's see if I've got everything else. I think that's about it. So those are the main updates. The foundation is the last thing I'd like to talk about. The foundation support is actually stronger than we anticipated by a good bit. We're still 100,000 below where we were last year, but last year was a normal year, and we actually anticipated a far worse setback on the foundation front. Too early to say that we're going to have extra money or extra grant making authority from the foundation. And in fact, it's sort of too early to draw any conclusions. And if there's anything we know about the COVID and how we move to the next phase with vaccines on us, if there's anything we know, it's that we don't know. We don't know what's around the corner, and we have to continue to sort of prepare that things are not going to be great, and from our ability to sort of meet our mission. So that's my report. That's my update. Would be more than happy to take questions. And in case I don't get a chance at the end, let me just say very sincerely from everyone at NCSL, including all the NCSL staff on this call who have worked really hard for this LSCC, the committees all week, and for this, one, I'll say thank you to them. And speaking of thank you, we're extremely grateful that we have the chance to serve you guys. And we so believe in the role of legislatures in our democracy and the institutions that it's just really a privilege for us to get to work for you. And so thank you for letting us do that. And I hope you have a really safe and have some time to just reflect on, as bad as things are for a lot of us, there's a whole lot to be grateful for. So thank you.
That was great, Tim. Thank you. I echo what you said about the NCSL staff. And I notice Angela and I talked a little bit that we've had several staffers who chose to spend their Friday on this call. So thank you. I think there's probably about 10, 20 folks here. Thank you for being on here. Just listening in and just hearing what we have. You may have great suggestions, so please don't hesitate to chime in at any point in this. I want to also echo the foundation. Wow, that's exciting news, and that so speaks to the work of the staff who do the NCSL Foundation work. Incredible connections there. And for those of you who don't know, the foundation supports many of our premier events that we hold. and is responsible for enabling lower tuition on LSMI. It paid for the senior cohort that we did. Just in so many ways supports the work that staff does. And we need to thank them every chance you get. If you see sponsors, if you know of any sponsors, send them to NCSL. I think that those folks recognize that we're a big piece of what happens in the legislature. So big kudos there. That's great. Tim, do you have any suggestions for us, though, as kind of ambassadors of NCSL for new legislators, anything that we might be able to do in our own home states to help create the message?
Yeah, everything you can do for instance. I mean, it's always, we're on this perpetual wheel of familiarizing people with what we can offer them. They don't come in, many of them, have fleeting familiarity with the resources of NCSL. So you can rest assured that we will be connecting with our state liaisons to every new member through handwritten, personalized cards, as well as, like I said, a very sort of sophisticated email targeting campaign, so to speak, with resources and clicks to trainings that they can do. But yeah, if you get a chance, anytime you can, to say, hey, just be aware that we are members, because all 50 legislatures are members. We have all 50 states paying dues mostly. There's a couple that don't pay their full assessed dues, and of course it's still early, so we don't know what's going to happen. But last year we did, and so we want to make sure that they understand that this resource is here for them. So any chance you have to encourage them to say, hey, they're so consumed with just trying to figure out the world that they've just landed in if they're new, and we appreciate that that's overwhelming. So give them a chance to know that, hey, there's this other community that you can tap into when you're ready. Some of them, they just got to figure out the basics first. We're actually considering a new legislator program sometime after sessions, thinking that let's let them get through a session and then get maybe reach out to the leaders and ask them, like, hey, send us the keepers. We'll bring in a small number from each chamber, and maybe the ones who have taken an interest in the institution who look like they're going to be long-term contributors and future leaders. And the reason we're doing that is because we know right now they are kind of overwhelmed. So any chance you get, we really appreciate it, because we do on the dues, the vast number of states, vast majority of states, it's never an issue, right? Of course, they just, they pay the dues and they're happily members of NCSL, but it just never hurts to have a backup and support from you guys.
Thanks, Tim. Does anybody have any questions for Tim? Come on, you got to keep him on his toes.
This is Natalie.
Natalie?
I just want to say, based on what Tim just said about offering kind of a sophomore orientation program for some members, that's something that my leadership has asked for a couple of years, and it's just a difficult thing to do here just on our own. I think it would be great if NCSL did that. I'd love to be a part of that. And since I'm in Denver with you, I might be able to help out in person, hopefully. For
sure. Absolutely, Natalie. That's great. And we can come and do that. Of course, we can do Colorado training, every day of the week. And would be happy to do that. So, but yeah, we're going to be exploring that concept. So thanks for letting us know.
Anybody else? I don't see any hands up, so I'll look to Angela to help me navigate here. No? Okay. Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you for your leadership for this past year, and we're looking forward to more of the same in the coming year. So keep your roller skates on. We're just going to keep pushing you from the rear and let you charge ahead with us. So thank you. Well, we'll move on to reports from our LSCC subcommittees. Thanks for all the hard work this week, guys. Everybody's just kind of getting their feet wet, and I know that the bigger pushes will come later, but I'm interested to hear some of what you came away with during this week, and you can share it with everybody else, and then we can put all of our heads together. So Jennifer Jackson, can we start with you in legislative institutions?
Certainly, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So we met yesterday. Was it yesterday? It was yesterday. Wow, time is so weird now. Basically, we introduced our new members, and we we reviewed the staff chair goals for the year, and I tried to establish sort of a time frame or an approach to how we're going to achieve these goals, or at least work towards achieving them. Hopefully we'll make some progress on them. What we have been charged with is using the blueprint that this subcommittee created in the 2017-18 year to do a legislative success story video for the 2021 summit, which we are all hoping will happen in Chicago. And JJ is going to be working on that based on a system he has helped create to file for people to file ethics reports. He said sort of TurboTax style in South Carolina that will be publicly accessible too. I thought that was a very cool idea, and looking forward to seeing that come along. And Will Tracy on our group is offering to help him with that as well. We also have been tasked with updating the legislative litigation toolkit and the guide to writing the personnel manual to add some provisions related to the pandemic. So we will be looking at what NCSL has. NCSL has some resources for that. We're going to help pull those together for them. Finishing the oral history project, which we have decided we will be doing Zoom interviews with the past staff chairs instead of just pressuring them to send in their videos. And what else were we supposed to do? Oh, yes. And we are working on a deliverable, like a web page for ideas regarding legislative staff retention, and suggesting ways to produce metrics for measuring how, because John Heining raised the issue of, he wants to know, how are we doing in relation to other agencies in other states? And then we will also be working with NCSL to compile information about the lessons learned from the pandemic, which Natalie has indicated NCSL has a ton of stuff they've already done on this. I think our role in that this year will be, how do we put this together in a way that will be useful in the future and create sort of little vignette stories to help people make choices in the future. So that is my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, a few tasks ahead. Speaking of the pandemic, I think Natalie Wood said it the best. We're building on quicksand pandemic, and I thought that was a great takeaway. So we need lessons learned, and you'll see that as a redundant theme as we walk through what everybody's been asked to work on this year. I think documenting best practices, so to speak, or how we handled things and why we chose what we chose for certain practices needs to be documented for the future and for reference moving forward. So you'll see that again. Does anybody have any quick questions for Jennifer before we move on? Don't see any hands. Double checking with my wing woman. Okay. So we'll keep going then. The next report that we'll have coming out then is professional development, programs and professional development. Sabrina Llewellyn, Arkansas. Madam Chair, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. PPD committee met on Wednesday of this week. We welcomed a new member, Jill from Washington, and a new vice chair, Jackie Little from Maine. Thank you, Jackie, for saying yes to this year's charge as vice chair. I have quite a few updates, but I'll go as quickly as I can. We reviewed our goals that our staff chair gave us for this year. The goals pretty much are a continuation from what we had last year, but we did gain 2 new ones. A few highlights from those: for the Legislative Summit, we're going to continue to review the fitness app and expanding the fitness programming for the upcoming summit and potentially other future meetings. LSMI, I'll go into detail in a second. Ongoing programming for senior staff and directors. We're reviewing and continuing the engagement of these cohorts from the Senior Staff Leadership Development Program, which did not happen this year, but did last year, as well as looking at programming for the upcoming summit and ways to keep this cohort engaged. Basecamp, phenomenal. More details in a second. Young and New Professional Network. Last year, I appointed a subgroup which produced an important and enlightening report that struck a chord with our staff chair. So we're going to continue that subgroup, and they're going to look at lifting up additional ideas from their report, any other ones that they can think of for this particular group, potential nexus with the new staff certificate program, and creating a website presence targeted at YNP to help better formalize their existence. We're also going to look at deputy director programming. Thanks to Casey and others who have brought this to our attention, we're looking at creating more specific programming and targeted outreach at this group of staffers, those who are deputies and second in command. We heard a phenomenal presentation from Jean Rose. Jean, it was excellent regarding Base Camp. As some of you may know, it was a unique experience that they created for it this year. We had a total of 1,241 attendees from all 50 states, 662 legislative staffers, 130 legislators, 35 people from 9 countries, 224 foundation participants, and 190 other interested parties. So staff made up 53% of those participating. The Commonwealth of Kentucky had the most in attendance with 58 of the top 10 states. Way to go, Kentucky. Timeline-wise, this event was executed in less than 14 weeks, starting on June 11th to launch, which was September 15th. Marketing started on August 2nd. I said to Rose, to Jean, I will be terrified to see what you can do with more time because this was pretty flawless. Should this continue, NCSL staff did make note that they will need a little more time to secure more faculty, prepare and implement marketing, and complete the session wrap up. We had some amazing star power this year from Base Camp. They chose to stick with live presentation format to preserve the authenticity of the programming. It was continuous programming. You may recall between the segments, it gave NCSL an opportunity for promotion of the organization, staff leadership introductions, executive committee introductions, and other highlights. There was a low fee for this, and that certainly contributed to participation, the 23 sessions, 12 breakouts, the different networking opportunities, and there were 2 pre-conferences, one of which was international. And a successful trivia night. We had the salute to staff in Base Camp, 300 attendees with that, and 30 days post-event, the window, it showed that there's continuing interest for Base Camp. From the survey, 98% thought that the event and the speakers were excellent or good, and 100% said the platform was easy to navigate. So I would give that an A+. PPD is going to continue to see what might make sense for the timing of a Base Camp or similar programming in the future. It's clearly demonstrated that it was and could continue to be a great vehicle for outreach to staff. We did a high-level preliminary review of LSMI this year. Just a quick reminder, the decision was made to move LSMI to online in April of this year. The hotel contract was pushed out a couple of years. NCSL targeted staff who have not had an opportunity to participate in the past due to travel or cost or other considerations. Programming was held in August, every Thursday and Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They covered 9 programs throughout the month. Couple of points on this. There are clearly some real limitations with online programming of this kind that has been heavily based and reliant on the residency to produce the networking and the connections that you can miss if it's online. They did have social networking hours that were built in, but it was still a little difficult with children, family, and other personal and private commitments to keep them engaged. As of today, USC, Sac State, and NCSL have not made a formal decision as to whether or not LSMI will be in person in 2021. If it stays online, however, the structure of the program will be reviewed and the tweaks will be made, including working on different types of session execution where maybe you have the presentation piece, the instructional piece in one session, and a dialogue in a separate session at another time. Next steps moving forward, I had 3 subgroups working last year. They will remain in place this year, and the leadership has agreed to continue on with 1 new chair. So thank you, Lonnie Edgar from Mississippi, for choosing to chair. We have YNP, which is our Young and New Professionals subgroup, the Fitness Expansion subgroup, and the Staff Directors Workshop subgroup. I'm going to send out the memberships of those next week. And for our collective goals, we will continue to work on those as well as our bylaws requirements as a full subcommittee. So Madam Chair, we remain committed to doing whatever you say and whatever LSCC says per your direction. And on behalf of my Vice Chair, Jackie, and my full subcommittee, that concludes our report. Thank you.
Great report. Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot. I get that. I don't even know how you compacted that into, such a quick and succinct report, but thank you. Just looking around briefly, does anybody have any questions or comments for Sabrina? John Heining, I see your hand.
Yeah, just a real quick question. So we signed a contract with Sacramento State and USC, and I was just wondering if the fact that they had to push their hotel out I was wondering if that impacts the contract at all, the commitments that they had to make to the hotel.
Thanks for John. I'll certainly let Angela answer. I know we're going to get an in-depth report from them from January. So if that is the case, I'm sure we'll find out then. But Angela, is there anything you can add on that?
Yeah, I can add that the hotel contract does not impact our 5-year contract with USC and Sacramento State. It's totally separate. So there's no impact on that relationship and our contract with our vendors in that regard.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions for us? To those of you on the call, thank you so much for your patience with my reports. If any of you have any observations, concerns, or questions about these programs yourself or from your staff or from your colleagues, and you want to share them with me offline, I know this is may not be an opportunity where you want to do so. Please feel free to email me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Just before we leave that, can we just all give like a physical round of applause for Jean and Amy and everybody who everybody put in time and expertise to this, and absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. We're going to be bragging about this for a long time. It was slick. As one of my bosses says, slicker than spit on a baseball. Thing just went right through. It was awesome. Thank you. We'll move right on now to John Snyder with Information Technology, Social Media, E-Learning and Outreach, maybe the longest title of any of our committees. John, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sabrina, we also have 9 staff chair goals for this year. So we're right there with you, okay? So, we're doing what we can.
Thank you. Thank you.
We also, we spent the first few minutes, unfortunately, saying goodbye to one of our favorite members on our subcommittee. Miss Linda Triplett from Mississippi is retiring at the end of this month. It brings me great sadness because she's been a fantastic vice chair, a fantastic partner for me, and she's done a lot of great work with LSCC and the executive committee, and we are desperately going to miss her. I just want to let her know that how much we will miss her and how much we care for her and wish her the best. We did welcome some new members, Rachel Gudgel from New Mexico, Kristen Rottenhouse from Kansas, and John Courtney from New Mexico. Also, Martha went down the hall and buttonholed Betsy Theroux to be vice chair, the new vice chair of the committee. So we are fully staffed yet again, but so that's where we are. The first thing we did was we reviewed one of our deliverables from last year, the annual report. It is on page 21 of your agenda book, and we were just floored by it. Molly Ramsdale and that crew did a fantastic job. They were able to work off Martha's 3 C's, her kind of themes, and did a thematic annual report that I think really encapsulates what we did this year. And a lot of kudos to them for that. And I think it's really a way forward for us. I know that was something Martha wanted to do, but it's very readable and really gets the point across. On to other matters. We heard from Amy Skinner about the outreach and engagement calendar. Some of the highlights include the Get Ready for Session Week we're going to have again December 7th. Talked about the activities around that. Hopefully we'll have the return of in-person visits from the state liaisons coming up early next year. Even if we don't, we'll figure out some way to get it done like we always do. We're going to talk about training topics and ways to engage staff in those visits and highlighting what NCSL does for them. We then heard from Megan McClure on update again on the Building Democracy podcast, episode 4 of which drops today. Am I correct, Megan? And it covers the history of women's suffrage in the West prior to the 19th Amendment. We're really looking forward to that. She also gave us some engagement statistics, and this Building Democracy podcast is the most popular podcast we do. We are really thrilled with it, and it is so well done, so professionally produced, and so interesting. It really is. It really has been a hit, and we just applaud Megan's work and all the work of the NCSL staff for that. We also discussed creating an infographic to show the NCSL's professional development opportunities for legislative staff. This kind of came from a suggestion from the certificate work group in order to kind of let staff know. A lot of these young staff were kind of want to know what's next, where do we go from here? So if we can give them some sort of a landing page or some sort of an idea of what is out there after this certificate program for the new staff. We also discussed, in addition to that, something we talked about with the certificate program, doing some sort of badges for LinkedIn and other social media in order to do that. And we're going to look at that and see if we can get that done in January. Or start working on that a little more in January. We also discussed a little bit, falling back on what Sabrina mentioned, the staff chair's goal this year to increase the presence of YNP. We're going to work with you guys and assist Aurora and Matt however we can, and offer whatever help we can in order to get that done. So we'll talk more about that as the time goes on, Sabrina. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We also talked about the successful effort we had this year to increase the visibility of the staff awards. Mick Bullock gave us a very great presentation. The potential outreach was tremendous. We had over 600,000 potential views for all these awards that we put out. Next year, I think we're going to start even earlier. Put some of the nomination information out when we do our legislative staff week in May. And also, we're going to try to bring the award winners together on a landing page. We have several action items that we're going to continue on and really try to hit hard in January, including amending and updating the NCSL staff nominating procedures, plans for legislative staff week that are going to take place again, like I said, in May of 21, work on the state engagement reports, coordinate with Sabrina's folks with the staff coordination on YNP presence, doing the infographic and the LinkedIn badges, and then continuing the work of the subject matter preference center on the website, on the Fontiva website. It's up and running now, and you can add in your preferences. The question is now, what do we do with that? How do we deal with that data, and how do we get that going? How do we make that effective for the folks that are running the website in order to engage and increase our outreach? Madam Chairman, that concludes my report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
That's great, John. Thank you. I'm looking for hands, and I don't see any at the moment. That's what happens when you give such a succinct report, Mr. Snyder. Thank you. It's a lot of work. I understand that, but what a great thing that will come out of this, especially for the YNP and having that targeted kind of marketing. We have a captive audience, I think, and it will be well served to be able to develop this. I also want to throw out a thank you to Katie Z for all of her work over the course of a long period of time, trying to get these state data together for us in a way that we think is impactful for our members. So just didn't want to put that out there. Megan, of course, for the podcast, great work. I'm going to ask Megan to put in the chat. You can vote for this podcast to be to get an award. It's done by a Colorado group that looks at podcasts. And if she'll put that up there, voting is going until December 2nd, I believe. And wouldn't it be nice for NCSL, for somebody that came from this committee, to win that award this year? So I encourage all of you to go there and vote for our podcast and make it the winner. Maybe we'll even vote twice. Can you vote twice on that one? Darn it. Oh, well. But yeah, let's share that and share it with your friends and share it on Twitter and share it on Facebook and however else you can get the word out that that's there. The last episode featured a Georgia legislator being the voice of the past. And, we're really proud of that. And we'll try and give that some more airtime here. All right. We're just going to keep going since it's Friday, and I know that we want to kind of make some progress here. If there are no questions for John, then we'll go on to the work of the work groups and get some reports from them, starting with standing committees. And I think of our co-chairs, Jennifer Jones and Lonnie Edgar. Lonnie's going to kick us off, and then Jennifer's going to come in, right? Okay. Take it away, Lonnie.
Yeah, oh, hey, y'all. It's great to see y'all this Friday. I just wanted to say it's great to see your faces. Our group is awesome. I'd like to first start by thanking Molly and Laura and Jean for all the support they give our group. They are incredible. And obviously my co-chair, Jennifer Jones, is amazing. And then we've got some really awesome vice chairs with Monique and John and Casey and Esther. So really proud of the work we did. So I just kind of wanted to start off by recapping what we accomplished last year. I felt like we kind of hit all of our goals. There was obviously one or two with COVID coming up that we kind of got delayed on, but that's okay. We're going to, kind of reassess and reapproach those. And Jennifer will talk about that in a minute. But one of the biggest things I was proud of our group doing was really the online roster for all of the standing committees, because one of our big focuses that we had under Martha is really trying to increase engagement and communication and stuff among them. So we've got a website now. I'll put it in the chat for you. And it's awesome just to go through and be able to kind of put the names and faces together. So that's one of the things we did. Kind of tying into that, we also did job descriptions for each of the standing committee officers, so that was good. We plan to kind of build on that going forward next year, and then also kind of looked at some of the priority setting processes and attended 5 of the groups. 5 of the standing committees had their priority meetings this week. It was really awesome to hear all the engagement and discussion and setting those priorities. So I'm excited to see how those go to the executive committee. And then Jennifer's going to kind of talk about our goals coming up for this next part of the year. So I'll let her take over.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Lonnie. And yes, an amazing co-chair, Lonnie, as well. We've done a ton of work this last year, and we're really excited to see a lot of the work that we did show up in the annual report, and just wanted to put my congratulations to NCSL and certainly Molly and for making that happen. It was really impressive, and we really appreciate you taking the time to include all of the great things that we've done so that we have a product we can show for all the work. And it certainly doesn't include everything, but it's pretty impressive. So thank you for that. And I also just wanted to thank all of the members of this work group for that continuity and staying with us and staying on. Really appreciate that. So in the interest of time though, I don't know what John and Sabrina or not. Maybe you haven't done as many virtual happy hours with Martha, or I'm not sure. We only have 4 goals. So for ours right now, but they're big ones and we're very excited about them. And so our first one is to plan some professional development programs for the standing committee officers. And so we talked about that at our meeting this week, and we're going to do a short survey of the officers to help identify what trainings they would find most useful, what professional development they're looking for. But also we talked about wanting to see what they participated in so far. Did they participate in base camp? Have they been to Summit? Capitol Forum is certainly something most of them have heard about or attended, but beyond that, how engaged are they in NCSL? So getting an idea of what that is. We're looking at sending that survey by the end of the year. And we're going to be looking at different training resources to fill those needs and requests, and both those inside NCSL, the resources they have in-house. I've been seeing in the chat a lot of kudos to all of the resources that NCSL has on staff, and really great responses to those. So that is one. We don't want to overload Kurt. We know he's kind of up to here. That's what we've been hearing. But we're going to look at those resources. And then also we talked about looking outside of NCSL and maybe some of the states that have legislative trainers and use those for different things. So we'll be looking at that as well. Our second goal is to look at the standing committee programming and legislative staff engagement in that programming during this next year. And so we've talked about, and we had talked about this a little bit last year, but we're going to really dig into this year, is creating a meetings calendar for the standing committees, and hopefully including the professional staff associations as well. Maybe not all of the meetings, because that could be a bit overwhelming, but just allow everyone to see what programming is available, not just the members of the standing committees getting those invitations, but just to see the wide range of opportunities there are to participate in those committees and what they're doing. And at our meeting, Molly presented or gave us a sheet that kind of summed everything up for all the committees. And it is an extensive amount of programming and webinars and information fact sheets. As we've all said numerous times, I'm going to say it again, NCSL staff is amazing, absolutely amazing. And that just showed how much work both the standing committees, but also the NCSL staff haven't skipped a beat in COVID. And so just want to say thank y'all for that too. And then let's see, we are going to, with this monitoring, I think we're going to get an idea next LSCC meeting, what that calendar could look like and some options for that we'll be bringing to you. So our next goal is to develop a strategy and plan for communicating with the legislative staff directors when it comes to making their appointments for the legislative staff on the standing committees. And this has been something we've been working on in different ways for a while, but we're going to continue to look for additional opportunities and ways to engage them in doing that. And we discussed a few ways, maybe considering marketing a little differently to the directors, maybe them seeing it not as a tedious task they have to do in making these appointments, but seeing it as an opportunity for some additional professional development and information but giving information to their staffers to make them that much smarter when they go before the legislature, or provide any information and the job they do in their day-to-day lives. And so we're going to be looking at that, maybe some different marketing ideas on there. And then there was some discussion about whether or not to market directly to the legislative staff. And I know, John, that's where the overlap with the outreach, I'm not going to say the whole committee name, but the outreach team is going, because I know that on y'all's outreach and engagement calendar, there's some options on there looking at marketing or outreaching to the legislative staff directly. So I think we can work together on that and talk about that. The other thing is we're looking at potentially having 2 times in the year to get those, to reach out to the directors to make those appointments, and maybe thinking one of those is going to be, right prior to the summit when everyone's thinking about the committees and the work going on with NCSL and things like that. So we're going to be looking at options for that. And then we're also looking to see how everyone here, how LSCC can help us push out, some engagement opportunities to participate in the standing committees, and potentially having the LSCC members review the directors list for us to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information, and see, maybe y'all can make some, contacts, especially with the states and that don't have that many appointments to the standing committees, like 3, some 0, things like that. So really targeting some of that marketing to them and reaching out to them. And then last but certainly not least, as Lonnie had mentioned, we created some job descriptions last year as well. And we have the job description for the staff officers of the overall standing committees, Lonnie and I's positions. So we're going to work on creating that. And I just want to thank, we created a small work group to be working on that at our meeting this week, and want to thank everyone for volunteering for that, and look forward to working with y'all. And that is all I've got. Any questions?
I don't see any questions at the moment. I did just want to echo that. I think it's exciting that we are going to marry standing committee folks, professional associations. I think that there's a lot, there's 100 to 130 staffers on every standing committee, the average, right, Molly? Something along those lines. That's a huge audience, and that's, just to limit them to, here's your policy topic area, seems like an untapped place where we can go and try and empower staff even more. So I really appreciate your groups trying to pool that together and then outreach to them in other ways that'll support them, not only for that, but show them how they can connect to other NCSL services. And the calendar is just the tip of the iceberg for that. And it's going to be a lot of work, but I think it's definitely going to be a great impactful thing for the long term. So thanks for that. Anybody else? Questions? Okay, well, we're going to keep clicking along then. Certificate in Career Development. I want to first thank Wendy Jackson for your service as co-chair of this committee, even before being co-chair of this specific committee, during your time on PPD doing work for this. Thank you very much. You really have launched this and it's been fantastic. And I love that you are there to share and hand over the reins to two willing folks who firmly believe in our program, Othni and Aurora. Othni, thank you. And Aurora is going to speak, I think, for the group this time. So I'm going to turn it over to Aurora. Thanks.
Thank you, Martha. I can't express enough how big the shoes we have to fill are with Wendy and her co-chairs, Wayne Kidd and Linda Triplett, and also to our leadership, Martha, John, AJ, Chuck, just for getting this off the ground. The committee or the work group, we spent so much of most of our time talking about the program that had just been so successfully executed, thanks to Angela Andrews and Taylor Dibdahl, who really stepped up, and it was a joy to get to know her. And also to our faculty, our own in-house resources, Natalie Wood, Mark Coiner, Kurt Stedron, and Erica McKellar, who each led modules. We were able to really keep the costs down because of their expertise in areas, and it was really engaging. I was one of the members who was able to participate or observe all of the modules, and it was just fantastic. I'm going to give you some numbers, so I'm going to look over at my sheet. We had over 200 applications received, and there was a really lengthy review process. 106 of the applicants were accepted into the program, 105 registered, and 104 received certificates. The requirements for receiving the certificates were to attend all 5 modules and to complete the evaluation of the program, which is going to be key moving forward. And the one person who didn't complete the program left legislative service. I think that's an amazing graduation rate. There were 40 states represented, and they were divided into 2 cohorts, one led by Angela and one led by Taylor, and they met. There was a pre-session, and then they met for the 5 modules every Friday for 2 hours in October online. The Zoom platform was great. And they called it the Zoom Shuffle. I kind of think of it as a hokey pokey. Put your members in, you put your members out, and it was just great. People got to know each other. They stayed in the same breakout room for several discussions during the module, and it was all very interactive and engaging for everybody. And finally, there was a certificate presentation ceremony, which really celebrated their participation in the program and what they had learned. And several members of each cohort spoke, and I teared up a little bit, so did other people. And it was just really amazing. Their supervisors were invited to that ceremony, which was great to see the investment that they had made in their staff. And one of the things that really spoke to me is Wendy afterwards said that it was really rewarding to see these newer staff put together how their jobs fit into the larger picture of legislative institution. It was really a rewarding thing to see all of our hard work come to fruition. And there's definitely a market. There's a hunger for this kind of programming for younger and newer staff. Participants paid a $150 fee, and although we hadn't really planned on doing this online, doing it online ended up being a really big benefit because people who may not have been able to travel were able to participate. And the program raised over $15,000, and we don't have all of the expenses in, but we do expect to have a surplus. And then our next steps, we checked one thing off of the list right away. We definitely think that this is a program that is worth continuing. That was unanimous, so we feel good. We now have to just kind of look at the edges and refine a little bit. And some of the areas that we're looking at are the application process and the selection criteria, participation fees, delivery online versus in person, or both, or something like that. Requirements to get the certificate. Could we ask more? The cohort size, networking opportunities and when to offer them, whether we're offering the right modules for our audience, and whether we need to refine where the audience is, like the number of years of service they have, how to direct the participants into continued engagement with NCSL, like the roadmap to service, working with the IT subcommittee, and then also how to provide the next level in the continuum of career development for this particular cohort. Is there a stackable credits we can do? Is there a next step? And how do we move forward with this program?
Great report, Aurora. As you can see, my background was what we used when we celebrated the graduation for both cohorts. And it was the level of attention that NCSL put into making our vision come through was incredible. Having the supervisors there during the graduation just added to their interest in seeing this program move forward. And I mean, it was these things, these smaller things that made it incredibly memorable. They were mailed certificates that they can look at on their wall and be inspired. It just was so impeccably done. And as Aurora said, the success of this and the hunger that we read for programming for them through their application essays was obvious, and is part of the reason why you'll see YNP threaded throughout this year, looking for ways that even in a COVID environment, we can engage with this group, I think, that are somewhat underrepresented in some of what we're doing. So looking forward to everybody's suggestions for that. I have a YNP staff at home, so I know that there are a lot of things that are important to them. The idea of badges and the certificates are things that are valuable to them. It's not the big salary. Obviously, none of us would be here if that was it, but it's the recognition that, you know, I want to learn and I want to contribute, and simple pats on the back. And thank you to everybody who made this happen. And I agree, the sessions were amazing. You know, I learned more than I ever knew before, and it was engaging, and wow, we have so much talent on both sides of this operation. So just want to add that. And if we can do our last report, we will go to Professional Staff Association officers. Fred Messerer from California is going to give our presentation today. Thank you, Fred.
Oh, you're welcome there, Martha. We had just a couple of changes in staff. Martha was kind enough, or as I looked up in the dictionary, hoodwinked into replacing Betsy as one of the vice chairs along with Brock. And since our chair, Eric Nauman, wasn't able to make it, he was crazy enough to leave Brock and I in charge for the day. So everyone survived and we went off without a hitch. But we welcomed our 3 new members to the Staff Association Work Group, Ingrid, Kristen, and Richard. We are doing a work in progress at Martha's suggestion to do a documentation on how we're handling our business meetings and programming during COVID. And so it'd be helpful as a useful guide for the future if there's another pandemic, if we're doing in-person online hybrids. And we also want to give attention to the things we did not do and why we did not do them to save ourselves some time in the future. So I think that'd be all really beneficial to the 9 staff associations on how we do business going forward. We went through our staff chair goals, and including a big issue on the communication between the staff associations and being elevated to a chair, vice chair, president, vice president role, and how that affects with this group. And so everyone has a better idea that they have additional duties besides their staff association when they get elected. Our biggest issue was just for the work group to vote on the overhead allocation formula that some of you have seen before. All 9 staff associations have signed off on the new allocation formula. The Staff Association Work Group voted and approved the allocation formula, and NCSL leadership staff has also signed off on the formula. So then that brings us to Angela, because we need to actually vote on that ourselves as a LSCC group. And that's all we had from our organization. So it's time to get your vote and thumbs out.
Thank you, Fred. Angela, do you want to explain the formula for everybody who may not have a familiarity with it?
I would be happy to. Just one second. I'm going to put the memo that I sent to the group in the chat box so you can access that online. And I am going to attempt to share my screen. So give me a minute to do that. And I'm going to look. Megan, am I good? Everybody can see my screen? All right. So it's Friday afternoon, you guys, and we've been doing this for about an hour, and then I thought, well, why not? Let's talk about this really complex topic called the overhead allocation formula, and let's have a person that's not a fiscal analyst talk about it, which is me. So I am presenting this on behalf of the LSCC Professional Staff Association Work Group, who Fred mentioned. This is a change, a revision to the formula. And the plan was Eric Nauman, who's the lead fiscal analyst in Minnesota in the Minnesota Senate and chair of this work group, and has been really integral to this formula and presenting us with options for changes. The plan was for him to present it. He is unable to attend today, and I am tapped to do that. So happy to do it. So just everybody bear with me. I'm gonna try to make it brief. And there's a lot of information. So if there's questions, if you could just put them in the chat or raise your hand. My colleague Megan will be monitoring both, and we're just gonna go ahead and do this. So I think what makes sense, and sorry, I have to align my screens. So I thought before we just dived in and I started talking about certain aspects of the formula and what the changes are, I just want to do a quick level setting. Is when the staff associations decide to meet, when a staff association decides to hold a professional development seminar, as with most meetings we do at NCSL, in fact, all of them, we put together a budget. And with a budget, as most of you know, there's revenue, money coming in, that's registration fees for the most part. And then there's expenses. There are expenses, as you know, just to hold a meeting. That may be AV cost, faculty cost, meals, etc. One of those expenses within any staff association professional development seminar budget that we do is an overhead allocation. And that's what the focus of this conversation is going to be about today, is the overhead allocation fee that NCSL charges the staff associations. So you may be wondering, what is the overhead allocation? And as I mentioned, it's a fee that NCSL charges the staff associations that help to reflect the cost of administering these fall professional seminars. And their costs are kind of just help cover some of the expenses NCSL staff time it takes to put these meetings together. For example, negotiating hotel contracts, negotiating venue contracts, managing those contracts from start to finish. Sometimes there's multiple payment structures associated with those, setting up registration, monitoring registration, printing those badges, putting that all together. Some of you know, we send a big trunk out to the, and we call it a trunk. It is essentially a trunk that we send to the meetings that has all of our materials that we need. There's people, really wonderful people at NCSL, our accounting technicians, our registration technicians that help us do that. And then we get on site, we manage the meeting on site. And then when we are done with the meeting, there's a lot of, if you will, additional behind the scenes work to reconciling those meeting budgets, making sure registration aligns with what we saw on site, and that all those meeting expenses are paid. So this overhead allocation fee is in recognition of those administrative pieces that NCSL takes on to support the staff associations and these fall professional development seminars. I'm going to try not to get really into the weeds with this. It is very technical. And like I said, it's a Friday afternoon and I'm not a fiscal analyst, and I'm going to try to keep it brief and not confuse anybody. So Megan, if you could get up that annotation tool. So how do we determine the fee? How is that fee determined that I mentioned? And it's determined through a formula, and we creatively call it the overhead allocation formula. And there's 7 provisions of the formula, but for the purposes of our conversation today, I'm just going to cover the first 3. That really is the formula we use for determining the fee, if you will. And the first part of that formula, oh, it's so great. It works, Megan. All right, this is great. We're doing good. The first part of that formula is that each staff association is charged a $2,500 base fee. So regardless of the size of meeting, where it is, number of attendees, in the current formula, each staff association is charged a base fee of $2,500. The second provision of that formula is that each staff association will be charged $35 per paid registrant, so paid legislative staff attendee, for the first 150 attendees. So there's 2 caveats to that though. If there's less than 40 attendees, staff attendees, paid registrants at that meeting, that per capita of $35 is not charged. And also, if there's any guests are not part of the overhead allocation fee. They're not part of the equation when we start putting per capita cost onto it. All right, the third provision, hopefully you guys are still with me here, is that for meetings that have over 150 attendees, staff associations are charged $10 per registrant, per legislative staff registrant, for anything that's above 150. So the example being, if there's 151 attendees, they pay the base of 250, they pay the $35 per capita from 1 to 150, and then they pay an additional $10 for that additional attendee. So I see some questions or maybe some comments, the chat light up for me. Megan, if you could look at those. But I'm going to keep on moving on with the hopes that I didn't confuse you. So that's the provision. Those are the 3 provisions, part of the formula that we at NCSL use to determine the fee that we charge the staff associations. So you may be wondering, why are we discussing this? Why is this coming up? Why did the work group discuss it? Why are we here? Why am I before you here, before the LSCC to discuss it? And number one, last conference year, Martha charged the work group to take a look at this issue. And part of that reason is because the formula was adopted, the formula that's currently being used was adopted by the LSCC in 2008 and then amended in 2009. And it made sense to take it was been in place for 10 years. It made a lot of sense to take an opportunity to review it. What's been going on in the past 10 years? We also wanted to just do a check-in. Was this formula providing solvency and for all the staff associations? Was there any inequities with some of the staff associations? And I'll get into that in a minute. So was it ensuring success of the staff associations and ensuring that they're being solvent while also recognizing and acknowledging NCSL support to make these meetings successful. So that was another reason why we thought it was a good time to do a look back and review it. And then the third was just to assess the formula to ensure that it aligned with the evolution of staff association PDS meetings, right? In 2008, right around the Great Recession, actually. Meetings were just changing then. Some staff associations were doing joint meetings, but they would either do joint or standalone. Well, fast forward 10 years later, and we have seen staff associations do other things. There's been joint meetings. There's been a super PDS that now has evolved into a staff hub meeting. We even know that there's a staff association to really help leverage resources has met as a pre-conference. They've held their professional development seminar prior to the start of the summit. So we just know that the PDS landscape has really changed, and it also makes sense to just think about beyond the standalone meetings, what are staff associations doing to leverage resources, and does that formula essentially align with that? So upon this review, there were 3 challenges identified with the current formula. The first is that it was recognized that the current formula places a burden on the smaller staff associations. We know that the $2,500 base fee, for example, that every staff association is charged regardless of if they hold their meeting in conjunction with the summit. If they only have 20 attendees, they are charged a $2,500 base. And that can be very challenging for associations with smaller groups. For example, if there is a small staff association that holds a meeting with 20 attendees, if you divide that 2,500 by 20, that's basically $125 per head to hold that meeting. And so that really eats into a registration fee and really limits how a staff association can use revenue to support their programming. We also know that within the formula, if you'll remember provision number 2, within that formula, there's a $35 per capita charge once you get over 40 attendees in a meeting. And what we know is that a meeting can have 40 attendees and the association will pay $2,500. But if a meeting has 41 attendees, 41 staff participants, staff paid registrants, not including guests, we don't charge for those, that there is what Eric Nauman called a cliff, and maybe you fiscal experts know a lot about that, but it basically increases the fee to the staff associations by $1,435. So by just adding 1 attendee, there's an additional fee that's charged to the staff association. So again, that places a burden on the smaller groups that just have smaller meetings, smaller attendance. The second challenge identified was the lack of clarity and the chargeable attendee. And this was something that, as an NCSL staffer working directly with the liaisons to figure out these fees with our meeting staff, with our wonderful accounting staff, we had clarity about guests aren't part of the equation when we put together the fee, but we didn't have specific clarity. Do we include comped registrations as part of, the per head cost? That those comped being, maybe that's a sponsor, maybe that's a presenter. And also, do we include business registrations as part of that? Some staff associations attract vendors to their meetings, and those vendors pay a business registration. So as an NCSL request, and by practice, we included business as part of the charge and the fee, but didn't include complimentary. And of course, the current formula says to not include guests, and we don't. But as an NCSL request, we would like to have further clarity within the overhead allocation formula about who those chargeable attendees are. And then the final piece of it, challenge, is determining what the appropriate fee is for the joint meetings and the staff hub meetings. So I'm going to stop here and just say that those are the 3 challenges this group identified before I present the formula, the recommendations for the new formula. And I have a limited screen, so I'm going to rely on Megan maybe to shout some stuff out. And thanks, Susan, my cheerleader. Appreciate that. So
everything in the chat was complimenting you on the presentation. So
I appreciate that. I also have a husband that's doing a home renovation project right now. So if there's banging in the background, just let me know as well. So always good timing in my household. So
No worries.
let's continue on this. Oh. Okay. So now that I've identified the challenges of this, I want to present the proposed revision to the overhead allocation formula. And this was something I really just want to acknowledge here, that myself and my two colleagues, Arturo Perez and Mary Wild, along with Eric Nauman, spent a lot of time on. And I, in particular, want to recognize, and I am really bummed right here that Eric cannot present this, because he did a ton of work on this. As a fiscal analyst, he did forecasting. He looked at all of our data going back to 2008 when the 2008 formula was adopted, and to current, and put together a model and a forecast that really helped set the framework for what I'm presenting to you guys today. So I just want to acknowledge Eric's work and with this, and got us to this point today. So what is being proposed is a tiered schedule for in order to determine the fee moving forward. The first part of that, the first provision, if you will, is that each staff association would pay $62.50 per paid registrant for up to 40 attendees for a standalone meeting. I want to be very clear, for a standalone meeting, not a joint, not a super PDS or staff hub or anything like that. And what this does, this first provision does, it removes the $2,500 base that was charged to every association. And I'll get into the specifics of why this change was made. The second part of this provision and the recommendation is that there be a $35 per paid registrant. That's a mouthful to say to you guys. $35 per paid registrant for paid registrations between 41 and 150 attendees. That basically says NCSL will charge $35 per fully paid legislative staff attendee and business registration between 41 attendees and 150 attendees. So this provision right here removes that cliff that was identified. And the cliff being, as a reminder, is if you've got 40 attendees, you're just going to pay the $250 base. But if you got 41, well, you're paying $250 plus another $1,435. So that second provision removes the cliff. The third provision is exactly the same. It's $10 per paid registrant for paid registrations, 151 and more. So essentially, if you're a meeting and you have 151 paid registrations for that one additional person above 150, you're paying $10. And then finally, an additional $10. And then finally is the last piece is the clarity that NCSL was seeking, that these charges do not apply to guest or to complimentary registrations, but it would apply to business registrations. And that guidance helps us internally to really feel confident in the charges and the fees. So now, if I haven't, confused you enough, let's keep on going and we'll put this in practice. And this information is also in the memo I sent to you guys. And I'm not going to I'm not wanting to spend a lot of time on it, and you guys can see the differences. And this is for an example one for 28 attendees, right? 28 full paying legislative staff attendees. Let's just say no guests, no business. We'll leave it at that. Under the current formula, it's a flat fee of $2,500. Under the new formula, it's a charge of 28 times $62.50. So you'll see that would be a total fee charged to the staff association of $1,750. So as you can see, just with this comparison, it is less. Let's move on to example number 2. This is a meeting with 55 attendees with 5 guests. And I'm working on examples that were given 10 years ago just to modify them. So just knowing that's where this information was selected. So under the current formula, this group with 55 attendees and 5 guests, they would be charged a base of $2,500. Then they would be charged $35 for the 50 attendees, recognizing guest, that fee does not apply to guest, for a total overhead allocation fee of $4,250. Now, if we were to look at this under the proposed formula revision, and I just recognized I may have an error in my math, so this is embarrassing here. No, it may be, yes, 40 times $62.50, that's $2,500. So that's an error, and I think so, so I apologize for that. And then, so that's the first level or tier of that system. And then because there's 50 people, we would only charge $35 per head for those 10 people between 41 and 50 attendees. And then the last part of more than 150 doesn't apply. And I'm not going to read the number. Maybe Megan can quickly do the math in her head or somebody else and just put it in the chat. So really embarrassed. There's an error. I went through these multiple times. So you get the drift, I hope. And then finally, a third example is a meeting with 175 attendees and no guest. They would receive the, under the current formula, it's a base amount of $2,500. Then we would charge $35 for the first 150 attendees, which is $5,250. And then because there's 25 additional attendees, we would charge $10 for those 25 folks above 150 for $250 for an overhead allocation fee charged to that staff association of $8,000. Under the proposed revision to the formula, there would be a 40 attendees times $62.50. Then instead of going back and charging the full 150 attendees $35, we would charge we would charge for the 110 attendees between attendee number 41 and attendee 150 for a total of $3,850. And then finally, for those 25 remaining attendees above 150, so 151 and above, that's $10 a head for 250. So that fee would be $6,660. So I'm moving it over to the last slide. I'm hoping Megan maybe put a correction in the chat, and I'm hoping I didn't confuse you. The bottom line is, as you can see, with this revision, with this proposed revision to the formula, it helps the smaller staff associations while holding the larger staff associations harmless. So it would change, the changes to this formula would help the smaller staff associations ensure that their meetings are making a profit, hopefully, and that they are remaining solvent within the organization, while also holding the larger groups harmless. There's no kind of increased fee for them within the three-tiered structure. So I will also just close by saying that all of the governing bodies of the 9 professional staff associations approved this. These revisions, the work group approved these revisions, and then NCSL's executive management team also approved that as well. So I will stop here. At this point, I'll be happy to answer any questions and then turn it over to Fred as well. So I'm going to look in the chat.
Does anybody have any questions for Angela?
I do. I have a comment. It appears to me that everybody's going to be paying less, which means that NCSL collects less for their overhead. I just want to make sure that that is okay, because, you know, I did a calculation for NLPES and we would pay less as well. So across the board, to me, it's not really held harmless. It's actually everybody's paying less, it seems. And so I had a concern, does that cover your overhead? Because we see nothing about the actual cost of overhead.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this question, and then I would invite our CFO, Mary Otero, or Tim to chime in if they'd like. So yes, Linda, your observation is correct, that it's a lower fee across the board for all of the associations. And I would say that NCSL did make a consideration, and it's not as much, if you will, revenue on the staff association meetings, but it also is showing a commitment to the 9 staff associations to ensure the success of all of them. And I think that's something, you know, we talk about NCSL committed to the success of legislators and legislative staff and ensuring that all 9 remain solvent is important to NCSL. So with that, I would invite Mary, Tim, or Arturo to please chime in from a executive management team level if you care.
Well, I can start by speaking up. I'm looking at Tim, but why don't I speak up? And what I would say is that during our budgetary process to set up our fiscal year 21 budget, we had this information to consider. So it is baked into our plans. Secondly, I think the group realized that we're working on a formula and a plan that was outdated to the current way meetings are being held. And so that convinced us to take a look at this process and consider it from our perspective.
Yeah, Linda, 10 seconds. Thank you for pointing that out. We did consider it. Basically, we just decided that we'll absorb that into the NCSL budget and find a way to pay for it. And, you know, it's not an excessive amount of money. So, and we're committed to it. It's clearly part of the mission. So, so yeah, it's you are correct. It is not a held harmless scenario. There is a fiscal impact, but it's relatively minor, and it's, you know, something we're more than happy to cover through our general fund.
Martha, I would move approval of the change at the appropriate time, please.
Thank you. I think this is the appropriate time. I don't see any other questions. Second, and if everybody wants to raise your hand, we'll do it by a virtual visual vote and give everybody a minute to let Angela scan for her any votes. Any opposed?
I don't see any thumbs down or opposed or you know, turning low. So I would say I think we're good.
The formula passes, and Angela, thank you for that. Arturo, Mary, Eric couldn't be here. He had someone pass away in his family, so extra prayers go up for him too, please. I know that he would be here if he could. So great work. That was long overdue in this staff chair's opinion. Moving forward, I think that you'll see that we're not done with formulas yet. Fred, do you want to touch on that?
What formula are we working on?
So I think moving forward, we will be looking at this overhead formula when there are joint or staff hub meetings.
Yeah, because as Angela mentioned in her presentation, this is just for the standalone meetings. But like in 2018, the librarians in Relax had a joint meeting in Harrisburg for its staff hub for 2022, aka Angela's Nightmare, is also was already in the book. So any of these formulas that are ongoing will be for new meetings and not the ones we already have planned for the staff hub. But that'll be a work in progress, and we'll see what develops.
That's correct. Did you have anything else to add, Fred, before we wrap up on your report?
No, I'm good, Martha. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. All of the job descriptions will be ready for us to post online. As many of you know, you may have fielded those questions that say, you know, what do you do on executive committee, or what's it like to be a professional staff association officers, or what's it like to serve on a standing committee? What do I have to do? What's the time commitment? So all of these will be ready and done for the nominating process when we move forward. So I just want to thank you all for trying to describe what we do here. It's easier said than done. Exactly. And then we're wrapping up now. JJ with strategic planning, turning the floor over to you.
All right. Every time I try to do these Zooms, I try to find the perfect light, and I swear during the meeting it changes light. Now I think I'm jaundice or something, but I'm going to have to buy one of those professional halo lights or whatever for here, I think. So I'm going to be a bit of a broken record. Most of you know that strategic planning is an opportunity for the vice chair to meet with some very knowledgeable legislative staff members that have been members of LSCC for either a number of years or an officer position, or they might even be new with some new advice, to be able to come up with a list of priorities for the coming year when the vice chair will take over as chair. Well, of course, anticipating last year that I'd be taking over last August, in January, our group was ahead of the curve and went ahead and had that list of priorities put together. And before COVID hit, we actually finalized and narrowed those priorities from a large list down to 1 or 2 action items per work group and committee and priorities. So we completed that in anticipation of me taking over in August. Little did we know COVID would hit, and the decision was made for Martha to continue in her position and for me to continue in my position. Once again, it gave Martha the advantage of seeing a number of her different priorities come to fruition or continue to work on them that normally would come to fruition during my time period. And so that's good for Martha. What it's also done is brought to light a good bit that Martha and I really realized we had a lot of the same priorities. And so it was kind of an advantage because this is a year that she can continue to work on priorities that were going to be my priorities as well. So some of my items that have been on the priority list are getting checked off, like the allocation plan we just talked about. That was part of what I had planned we would probably have to implement and vote on during my term. So that's been taken care of. We've got a couple of other matters, like we said, with the joint meetings. But on top of that, I had anticipated I would be implementing the certificate program, but Martha got to see the certificate program implemented. So that's going to be one of those things that came off of the list as well. So I think my list dwindles a little bit even more as we see Martha accomplishing more and more of our mutual goals. That's a good thing though. So basically what I've told our folks on the strategic planning group is that what we're going to do is take a little break till January. And in January, when we get back together as LSCC, we will evaluate where we stand with Martha's goals. We'll evaluate which of those goals were also part of my priority and where we stand with those. And then focus on our priorities. There may be new priorities that also come up as a result of our reaction to COVID and other things that we didn't anticipate. And some of those, again, may be done during Martha's remainder of her period, or some of them may take place when I take over in August. So that's where we stand right now. And hopefully come January, maybe we can meet in person and so forth. And if not, we'll continue to do these Zoom meetings and we'll move forward with those, and we'll continue to plan accordingly. But as for now, I'm kind of sitting back and amazed by the amount of work everyone else is doing, and I appreciate that work that's being done. And I appreciate what Martha's doing as chair this year and the input John has had constantly. And so sometimes as vice chair, I've asked Martha and John, I'm supposed to be doing more, right? There's something I'm supposed to be doing. And they tell me, you're really supposed to be planning, and you're supposed to be watching what we're doing and kind of being there as another voice and everything. But it sometimes does feel like you're just waiting in the wings a good bit. So I appreciate that advice from Martha and John, and I'm going to continue to do that while continuing to monitor everything. So any questions, Martha? That's what I've got.
Any questions for JJ? I don't see any hands up. It is a moving picture. It's not a Polaroid snapshot. It is a moving picture. And I think all of us just contribute on an ongoing basis, and one thing leads into the next thing. And we've shown that we can be very flexible no matter what happens. This group in particular has done their pirouetting, as Wendy liked to coin, and NCSL staff truly has done most of the pirouetting. So let's just keep it going and we'll be flexible. There may be some crazy things to come. And JJ, no telling what's going to end up with you, but we're all in it together. And I think that's the best part of being a part of this group is, we get to have a say so, we get to make a difference, and we do. So I know everybody's probably ready to stretch for 1 minute. I'd ask you to bear with me for just one short little piece. We have typically in our in-person meetings added some value to our home states by doing some professional development exclusive to this group. And I would love to keep doing that. I mean, your time is so valuable and you're giving to us and to NCSL, but is there something that we can do for professional development that will translate and you can carry it back home? And we've had some conversations about what might be interesting or pertinent, but really would like to hear from you all. So I think we're just going to do, say, 5 minutes, no more than 5 minute chat with your peers in breakout rooms and talk about what kind of professional development, if you're interested in that, you might like to do this year within this small group. And we'll just take 5 minutes of your time left on your Friday just to do that so we can forward plan moving forward.
Right.
So Angela, I'm not sure if you or Megan are moving us.
I'm gonna open the rooms now and it's we'll be very quick, and thanks.
Thank you. Angela, did you need me to move into that room?
Only if you want to.
Angela, do you want do you want me to go into my room, take notes? Do you want?
I know. We were talking about professional development relating to race and equity, and John was talking about how there's somewhat of a push in our state houses to look at different things through a lens that considers race and equity in a way that we haven't in the past. So how laws are drafted or how performance evaluations are conducted, things like that. And then I think also I've been doing some professional development on, just being more sensitive and open about racial discussions in our workplaces. And so along those lines, I think that kind of training has been really helpful lately.
Fabulous. And feel free to put in the chat if you have some ideas and things, and then we'll have a record of it too. Does anybody else want to volunteer on what they talked about?
Yes. We talked about LSPA has been, the Leadership Staff Professional Association has had a workshop series led by our chair, Sharon Violini. I'm not sure if she's on today. And so if she's not, she can't even defend herself, but it's been fantastic. She's spent a lot of time getting certified in life coaching and that kind of stuff. And so she's been doing a series, and yesterday I won, because of my participation, some counseling from her, and I'd like to donate that to you guys. Because she is just fantastic. It's been a really, really wonderful and uplifting series. And I think it would be beneficial for everyone.
She did one on values and another one on mindfulness, and very helpful.
Yesterday's Happy Place was so good.
Who is she?
Sharon Violini in California.
Not here today because California is doing their orientation for their members. So she wasn't able to join us, but you're right, she can't defend herself, so we'll voluntold her to do it. Thank you, Aurora. Anybody else?
I think I was the designated person for my group. So we had talked about like some general like leadership training topics, and so like I did some of the LSMI sort of follow-up alumni sessions that Paul Danchik did last summer, and they're really excellent. And so something that focused on like resilience and leadership and challenging times, that sort of thing seemed good. Also, Marianne suggested something that would maybe be for more of a focus session for new LCC members to just kind of get them more acclimated to what the LCC is and how it operates. She thought would be a good session. And John mentioned maybe training on like writing style.
Got it. Thanks, Matt.
We had a small but mighty group, and we kind of tagged on to what Matt was saying about the need for sort of some better ideas about how to onboard people for LSCC, and kind of having to start that back, either whether it's the standing committees and then the professional staff associations with preparing people for what they're getting into. Because my comment was, I think you spend your first year, I didn't feel like I was very productive or helpful, because you spent the whole first year sort of in this fog of figuring out how to do things, and particularly in the virtual environment. Ingrid is new and commented about, especially when you haven't gotten to meet people in person, it makes it even harder. But I think we can do a better job with that.
Got it. Anybody else?
One of the things that we discussed during our time was dealing with the staff negotiations with staff and legislators, specifically for senior staff members. And I know that may not apply to everybody, but I think it covers most. But I think it's a skill that is we're always looking at. I know Kurt Stedron we have used his expertise on negotiations, but I'm not sure it was targeted specifically at senior staff members. So that was something that we thought was a possibility.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Tim. Anybody else?
Hey, Martha.
Yeah, Nate.
So I'm going to share a file in the chat box. That's an article that was written by my chief learning officer about fellowship, which is something we did some sessions on recently, and it was fantastic because, you know, the concept is to be a good leader, you got to learn to follow first, and you have to understand that other side of the coin. And it's a good article, and it's kind of military in its perspective, but he adapted it for us, and it was really, really positive.
Nice. Yeah, I wonder if there might be some folks within the states who do some training and things that you might share their names with Angela for, you know, guest invitational trainings for us. I agree that we probably need some opportunities where everybody can get to know each other. And I think most of us know this is a really good safe space for us to be able to do some of these trainings. So if you have some ideas, or folks in your state that do some training that's general enough for everybody, send those along too. That'd be great. Okay, well, it is Friday. You guys have done an amazing job kicking things off. Again, I want to see if Tim has anything to add, or Angela, before we start to wrap things up.
I did forget one thing, which JJ reminded me of, and something he said, which is we have not scheduled the next NCSL executive committee exactly yet. It will probably be the third Friday in January, sometime around there, sort of an afternoon kind of thing. You know, it's a rough time. Anytime, you know, from now till next May is not a good time. But, you know, we'll try to keep it very much to the point and do sort of the formal business of NCSL. And then we're hoping to do our NCSL executive committee in person, maybe sometime in June. Of course, that is all very much uncertain. So, so we'll let you know as soon as we nail that down 100%. It's probably like 90% nailed down.
Yeah, that'll be fabulous. Just a reminder too, to go vote for our podcast. I want to take a point of personal privilege here and thank JJ and John for being such good team players. I mean, I know I get to talk a lot, but it is a group effort, all of you. Your time really matters, and your expertise is huge. And I think that we are such an incredible group, and knowing that we have this kind of solidarity and continuity moving forward in a year when so many things are churning is just going to make us really powerful and profound and progressive throughout the year. So I'm excited. I have to see if Linda, if I can put you on the spot. without tearing up here. Do you mind just saying a few words to us? You've been such an incredible part of the team. You've been such an incredible part of NCSL for your career, and we all admire and respect you so much. Thank you for your friendship and for being a part of this. I would love for you to say a few words if you're up for it.
I am. I don't know if I can, excuse me, do it without tearing up, but I will try. I just feel like NCSL is such an amazing organization. And it has been the great privilege of my career to be with you people. So see, I really can't do it without tearing up, because I will miss y'all so much. Y'all are so great, and it's so much fun to work with y'all and pursue such good ideas and see them come into being. And I will still be around. So I've given y'all my cell phone number, and I'm just the biggest fan of all of y'all. So I know great things are to come, and I will be with grandbabies. So love y'all, and I will miss you.
We have to make
Mississippi's
you the
been blessed to have
honorary
you.
member of the hospitality suite.
You do what?
Hospitality suite.
Okay.
No, thank you, Linda. Appreciate it. And for all the NCSL staff who are on this call, seriously, I wrote down probably 20 names here. Thank you. I mean, your commitment on a Friday afternoon is to be applauded too. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you. As always, the door's open. Have a fabulous weekend, a great holiday, and we'll be talking in between now and January. So take care, everyone.
See everyone. Happy Turkey Day.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Hi, everyone.
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Bye, all.
Bye. Oh,
Bye.
Natalie's got company.
Yeah, he's